Today we have a guest speaker, Naomi Graetz, who's going to talk about the women in the book of Judges. And you want to share also, right? The PowerPoint. Okay. And there you go.
Okay, so now I have it here.
It's already recording.
Okay. So as you can see, the title is called From Achsa, Daughter of Caleb, to the Concubine of Gibeah in the book of Judges. And what's interesting actually is the story from Achsa, which is in the first chapter of Judges, just happens to also be in chapter 15 in the book of Joshua. So in a few weeks, if something seems familiar to you, you'll know, of course, if at our age, we don't always remember everything, so you may not necessarily remember it. So let me just tell you a little bit about the book of Judges, not too much, but just a little bit. So that the book of Judges is the second of the former prophets. Its place is determined chronologically. And it covers the period after Joshua's death at the end of the book of Joshua and before the anointing of Saul as king in the book of Samuel. And the book is named after its central characters, judges, although I must tell you that there aren't that many judges in the book of Judges, but they're called judges. They're not really judges as we could understand that. And the book of Judges ends before Samuel the prophet is born. And some people say that perhaps the priests in the book of Samuel should maybe be considered judges as well. Yeah.
What do you mean by former prophets?
Well, the way you divide the Bible is you have Tanakh, right? Tanakh, Torah. Nach is Nevi'im, but you have the former prophets, which are mostly the historical books, and the later prophets, which are, the prophets. So that would be the former prophets, right? Which are mostly historical books.
Hysterical.
Okay, so the judges are mostly portrayed as tribal leaders, who are regional leaders and military leaders. Some of them might be familiar to you, like Samson or Jephthah, and Deborah is another example of, and Samson. Samson is also considered to be a judge. I say judge in quotation marks. Okay, and what's interesting is that. And this is what we're going to be looking at. It opens in the time of the elders who survived Joshua, right? And it concludes in chapters 13 to 16 with the stories about Samson, all right? And then at the very end of the book of Joshua, there's 21 chapters there. The very end of the book of Joshua, you have some really horrendous stories. Now, I must tell you.
Of Judges.
Of Judges.
Yeah, you said Joshua.
All right. I said Joshua by mistake. I'm sorry. J and J, No, but I want to really, this is America, and I think I have to give you some trigger warnings for the stories that we're going to be seeing. All right. I think it's very important. The first part, not so much, but the second part, yes. So the first part will be the story of Achsa. But before we get to the story of Achsa, so you have a lot of women in the book of Judges. And
it's very,
it's a very, should I make it bigger?
No.
Right. It's very, very interesting because there are lots of interesting things concerning women in the book of Judges, and you will get to the book of Judges, I guess.
Yeah.
So there's the story of Deborah. There's a story of Yael, who kills Sisera. There's Sisera, who's the enemy. His mother appears there. And you have a concubine who's not named from Gideon. But you can look and see everything in back there. And you have Samson's mother, also without a name. And at the very end, you have the story that we're going to be looking at. So let's begin with Judges chapter 1. Right? Which begins with after the death of Joshua. Now, as I said before, in Joshua 15, the same story appears, right? So there's a story here, where they're still conquering, the conquest is not finished yet. And Caleb, do you remember who Caleb was? Caleb and Joshua were the spies, the good spies. And they remained, now it's really very interesting. Caleb, I'm not going to talk about Caleb, but if you think about Caleb to a certain degree, why did Joshua become the next leader and not Caleb? Right? And I think one of the reason has to do with his name. Why?
No idea.
I know why.
Why?
Because it's a dog.
Yes, Caleb.
Oh
Caleb, right? So,
His job.
now whether that name was given to him before or afterwards, but you're not gonna have a leader whose name is, I'm saying this is a joke, but anyway, he was an important person, all right? So Caleb, a little bit like one of these fairy tales says, okay, and I'll read that to you. And Caleb announced, they're marching and they're going to conquer a place called Devere, or another name for it is Kiryat Sefer. And Caleb announced, I will give my daughter Achsa in marriage to the man who attacks and captures Kiryat Sefer. His younger brother, now that's a little bit strange. It's not clear if it's really a brother or not, because you'll see. Othniel the Kenizzite captured it, and Caleb gave him his daughter Achsa in marriage. That's why the idea that he might be his younger brother, maybe he wasn't. When she came to him, she induced him to ask her father for some property. Right? In other words, she wants a property. Right? She's demanding her rights. She dismounted from her donkey, and Caleb asked her, what's the matter? She replied, give me a present, for you have given me away as Negev land. Give me springs of water. And Caleb gave her upper and lower guloth. In other words, she was not happy with the land that she was given. It might have been Negev, it might have been in the Negev, it might have been dry land without any water sources. Why did it suddenly have this cold air coming in?
Yeah.
Good to know.
Anyway, but she's demanding her rights. So we have this story with a strong woman who demands her rights from her father. Okay, and that's how the beginning of the book of Judges, right? With a very, very strong woman, right? And as I said, you have the same exact story in Joshua. We don't have to really look at it, but I just want you to see it on the screen. You'll come across it in a couple of weeks when you get there. So in the commentary for the Jewish Study Bible, you have the families of Caleb as part of the tribe of Judah. So in other words, Caleb is from a very important tribe, right? And according to this, there was some sort of negotiation going on. So some people are not so happy that it's Achsa, a woman who persuades her father to get a better deal. And so in the Septuagint, that's the LXX, the Septuagint, which is the Greek translation of the Bible, Othniel is the one who persuades her. In other words, it's very interesting. They're trying to take away from a strong woman and saying it's the husband who is behind it all. All right, very interesting that there's a change there. All right. And so she does not want dry land. She wants land with springs. All right. So this is really very interesting. And the family, the Kenites, were a group that, were related to, they were very close to the Israelites and Moses married or possibly into that family as well. Okay, so let's just go on. So Robert Alter, who's translated the entire Bible, it's really in his own way, and it's very poetic translation. It's very interesting that he writes, this tradition is likely copied from Joshua to Judges. In other words, that the Achsa story, which appears in the book of Joshua, was then copied here. I'm not going to have an opinion about it because not everyone would agree with it, but it's interesting that, okay? And he points out that this is very similar to the story with David and Goliath, when David, after he kills Goliath, gets the daughter, right? One of Saul's daughters. So in other words, this idea, it's not only in fairy tales that you have this story, but it's a story, it's a motif that appears here as well. Okay, he makes it clear that Asa is the sole initiator of the following scene. Okay. And when she gets off of her donkey, all right, it said, titznach. Titznach is like from a tzanchen, like a parachute, all right? In other words, it's an unusual word. You come down, right? It's a very unusual word, and it appears in one other place when Rebecca also falls off of her. She falls off of her camel, right? Right. So it's very interesting. Why is she falling off? It's not clear, but it certainly will make a statement if she does that. You might want to see some interesting pictures here. This is I'm going to show a couple of them, but just to give you a sense of where it appears. I'll actually show you different sizes here, but this is in a medieval text, which has commentary as well. Here you could actually see this. So here you could see this image that we just saw before. In the background, you can see the water. You see the water supply in the back. And you have the upper and lower waters, which you need in the Negev. And according to the Midrash, Othniel, right, the place he conquers is called Kiryat Sefer, the city of the book. So according to the Midrash, right, if he conquers the city of the book, then he's a great scholar, right? And so he was a Torah scholar. And according to the Midrash, Asa is a businesswoman who manages the family's affair so that her husband can devote himself to his studies. That's pretty cool,
Going on.
right? So this is the Midrash. This is the Midrash. Okay. And so here you can see the picture where he's extending, right? He's extending Caleb. This is just Caleb and the daughter, right? No Othniel here, right? Just Caleb and his daughter, and he's extending his left hand, and with his right hand, he's pointing to Asa. And she is also has her right hand extended, and her left hand is holding on to her gown. So it's a really interesting picture. I have one more, oh no, that's the last one. Okay. And here's another picture, which appears in the Aktatuch, right? The Aktatuch, you've heard of the Hexatuch, which would be with the Hexatuch, you have the Pentateuch, and then you have the Hexatuch, which would be 6, which includes the books of Joshua. Right? And then you have the Aktatuch, which would include also the earlier historical books as well. All right. So this is the Smyrna is where Turkey, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so, right? In the Byzantine period, all right, and so you have here the three of them. You have Caleb sitting here, and you have Othniel here, and you have the daughter here. Notice the hands again. You see the hands? Interesting. Hands are always very interesting. Here's another picture. All right, this is more modern, 1886. All right. You see the donkey over here? And here she's, I guess, here's her father, Caleb, and in the background would be the new husband. Another picture here, she's actually, this is in the Vulgate, the Latin Bible. And so you see her father is up high, right? And she's down below. I guess that he's on a camel and she's on a donkey. She hasn't fallen down yet. They're very interesting pictures. You know, they in themselves are just very interesting.
Wait a second. Could you just go back to because I'm looking at that animal on the right. Okay, so yeah, okay, so that's the camel,
That's
and
the
then the
camel,
other one is
And
the
this is
donkey.
the donkey. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I'm used to a screen where I could move it. Okay, so as I said before, in the book of Judges, there are 21 chapters. We met up with right? We met up with Asa, right? And when we come to chapter 19, which we're going to jump from chapter 1 to chapter 19, it starts out with, in those days, there was no king in Israel. So this is where you need the trigger warning, okay? The story you can hear is really horrendous, all right? And you have the story of the concubine of Gibeah. And in chapters 20 and 21, after the story of the concubine of Gibeah, we have a civil war. The tribe of Benjamin is decimated. In chapter 21, we have a mass rape of two groups of women from Yavesh Gilad. You actually taught them, right, about that? No, you're interested? And Gilad and Shiloh, so that the tribe of Benjamin won't be wiped out. And the book ends, the book of Judges ends with, in those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what they thought was right in their eyes. So one could argue that the book of Judges is sort of a polemic. You know what a polemic is, an argument. It's a polemic that says we need a king, right? Because if you start out with some sort of real strong women demanding rights, and you end up from a woman's perspective with a horrible situation, and you need to have law and order, and so you need to have a king. Okay, so this is that picture that you see here, the ambush of the Benjaminites. We're not going to talk about them at all, but you can see the picture a little bit more stronger here. Here is the ambush.
When they say civil war, who was it that wiped out the Benjaminites?
The Israelites.
The different two tribes.
That's what I'm saying, a different tribe.
Yeah. And they were almost wiped out. At the end, look, you could go and read the book of Judges. It's people don't usually read these stories, by the way. People don't know these stories. They're so horrible that no one wants to know them. You actually have a similar story coming up in this week's parasha with the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, where they knock on the door and they ask for the girls, right? And Lot is about to give his daughters, but then what happens?
She turns it.
The angel, right, stops it, right? You have what we call machina ex deus, it's like the word the machine from God. In other words, godly intervention. But in this story that we have today, you do not have godly intervention, and that's why it's so horrendous, right? So this is how it begins. In those days, when there was no, I won't read the whole thing, but in those days, when there was no king in Israel, a certain Levite residing at the other end of the hill county of Ephraim took to himself a concubine from Bethlehem in Judah. By the way, a concubine has the legal, in Hebrew it's pelegish, but has a legal standing of being like a wife. Just so you know, all right? So that she in almost all, even the story with Hagar, she has a legal standing as a wife. And we're reading about Hagar in these 2 weeks, right? Once his concubine deserted him, leaving him for her father's house in Bethlehem in Judah, and she stayed there a full 4 months. So in other words, she leaves her, right, in the time when there's no king in Israel. She leaves her husband, right? She deserts him. The Hebrew word actually has a strange word, which is almost could be understood as prostituting herself, because it has that word, but everyone agrees that it simply means she's leaving him. It has nothing to do with that. But if someone, you should just be aware of the word in Hebrew. And she stayed there for 4 months. It's a long time. Then her husband sent out, after 4 months, with an attendant and a pair of donkeys, and went after her to woo her and to win her back. She admitted him into her father's house, and when the young woman's father saw him, he received him warmly. And now you're going to have a wonderful relationship between father-in-law and son-in-law. Nothing about the woman here. In other words, he goes to get her back, but then he spends all of his time drinking and eating with the father, right? And they're having so much fun that the father doesn't want him to leave. He wants to leave, but the father doesn't want him to leave. And he said, stay, all right? And now we come to the bottom. The man started to leave, but his father-in-law kept urging him until he turned back and spent the night there. Early in the morning of the 5th day, he was about to leave when the young woman's father said, come, have a bite. The two of them ate, dawdling until past noon. Then the man, his concubine, and his attendant started to leave. His father-in-law, the young woman's father, said to him, look, asked him to stay again, right? Look, the day is waning toward evening. Do stop for the night. See, the day is declining. Spend the night here and enjoy yourself. You could start early tomorrow on your journey and head for home. But the man refused to stay for the night. Okay? What does that mean? He's taking his chances. We're talking about going out into the night. There are no lights out there. And you're going out into the unknown. Traveling is dangerous to begin with, but nighttime traveling is even more dangerous, all right? He set out and traveled as far as the vicinity of Jebus, that is Jerusalem. He had with him a pair of laden donkeys, laden with provisions, and his concubine was with him. Since they were close to Jebus and the day was very far spent, the attendant said to his master, giving him advice, let us turn aside to this town of the Jebusites and spend the night in it. But his master said to him, we will not turn aside to a town of aliens who are not of Israel, but will continue to Gibeah. See, at that time, Jerusalem was not a Jewish town, right? And he didn't trust. So we'll go to Gibeah instead, which is a little bit north of Jerusalem, not that far. Come, he said to his attendant, let's go to one of those places and spend the night either in Gibeah or in Ramah. They traveled on. The sun set when they were near Gibeah of Benjamin. All right, Gibeah is the tribe of Benjamin. Now you can understand what's going to happen later on. Okay, they're going to be spending the night there. And he went and sat down in the town square, but nobody took them indoors to spend the night. No home hospitality. They're sitting there and no one comes out to greet them. But in the evening, when it's already dark, an old man came along from his property outside the town. All right? He hailed from the hill country of Ephraim and resided at Gibeah, where the locals were Benjaminites. And he tells the old man, we have plenty of provisions. Don't worry. We have bruised straw. We have feed for our donkeys. We have bread and wine for me and your handmaid and for the attendant. We lack nothing, right? We lack nothing. But, right? He happened to notice the guy there. And he said, where are you going? Where do you come from? We're coming from Bethlehem. That's where I live. No one has taken me indoors. And the man says to him, don't worry. I'll take care of all of your needs. Don't, on any account, spend the night in the square. And he took him into his house. He gave food to the donkeys. They bathed their feet. They ate the food. Okay. And now we come to the rough stuff. While they were enjoying themselves, the townsmen, a depraved lot, had gathered about the house and were pounding on the door. They called to the aged owner of the house, bring out that man who's come into your house so that we can be intimate with him. The owner of the house went out and said to them, please, my friends, do not commit such wrong. Since this fellow has entered my house, do not perpetuate this outrage. Look, here's my virgin daughter and his concubine. Let me bring them out to you. Use them. Do what you like with them. But don't do that outrageous thing to this fellow. But the others would not listen to him. So the man, this is a Levite, not the old man, the man seized his concubine, pushed her out to them. They raped her and abused her all night long until morning, and they let her go when dawn broke.
Wow.
Toward morning, the woman came back, and as it was growing light, she collapsed at the entrance of the very house where her husband was. When her husband arose in the morning, he opened the doors of the house and went out to continue his journey. And there was the woman, his concubine, lying at the entrance of the house with her hands on the threshold. Get up, he said to her, let us go. But there was no reply. So the man placed her on the donkey and set out for home. When he came home, he picked up a knife and took hold of his concubine and cut her up limb by limb into 12 parts. He sent them throughout the territory of Israel. And everyone who saw it cried out, never has such a thing happened or been seen from the day the Israelites came out of the land of Egypt to this day. Put your mind to this, take counsel and decide.
Wow.
Let's take a little
Yeah.
breath, all right?
Anyone heard the story before? Read the
I
story?
read it.
No, never read it?
I did, I read
You
it,
you read it?
yeah,
I
but I
did not.
don't remember
I
it.
didn't remember.
But I mean, I remember that I read it.
Yeah.
Well, I did not read this, by the way. I came to this story really, very, very recently. When I say recently, about 40 years ago, but, you know.
Not when you were a
But
child
this was not,
learning
this
in
was not the
religious
thing
school.
that we looked
I
at.
remember.
Although Phyllis Stribble, the wonderful Bible scholar who just died last week, wrote a wonderful book called Texts of Terror. And this is one of the stories that she has in there. She also has Hagar
Yeah.
in that book, and she also has Jephthah's daughter. And I forget who the fourth one, there's four tales, I forget who the fourth one was. And so we'll look at some pictures, which again, you need a trigger warning for that. But there's lots of problems here in this text, but there's also the similarity with the story of Lot. And as I said earlier, Lot is prepared to give his daughters, but God intervenes. Here, no one intervenes, right? And that's what you have, the lawlessness. Where's God in this story, right? There's no law at all. So let's look at a few pictures and then we'll discuss we'll discuss.
Oh, my.
Okay. So here, this is relatively okay, by the way, when you say, oh my God. So here you have, if you think about October 7th, all right, and the documented rapes of women, this is actually a photograph from Vietnam where the woman has been raped and murdered, and the men are smiling and posing for the photographer. In other words, they don't, they think this is funny or interesting. And it's similar to the indifference of the husband who couldn't care less. While he's in the house drinking and having a good time, the wife is outside being, raped. I mean, if you think about it, if you had a screenshot, on one side you have a party, and on the other side something horrendous taking place. So if there's, the indifference is really problematic. Here you have a picture of James Tissot, who has lots and lots of Bible stories. He's I think he's 19th century.
Yeah.
I think you use a lot of his pictures.
Beginning of 20th century.
What?
Yeah. And end of the 19th century.
Yeah. And so here you could see the old man confronting the Ephraimites, right? They really look, pretty awful. Here's now this is really funny. I'm not funny, haha. It's really interesting that you have here a horrible scene, right? The men are carrying her off, right? You can see where their hands are in the position. This is a Levite. What does it look like he's doing?
Waving them off.
Yeah,
He's
right.
not going to church though.
Right? Bye-bye.
We're gonna
Right?
have dinner.
Enjoy yourself.
And then on this side, you have the party. I mean, on the one hand, it's done almost humorously, but it's a horrendous picture, right? It's really horrendous, right?
Look at the guy on the side who's smiling, the little elfy guy.
This one here?
Mhm.
Yeah, actually, he looks like a younger person, but Okay,
And they
So-
didn't want the daughter.
what?
They didn't want the virgin daughter, they just wanted the concubine.
No, the old man did not throw out his daughter. In other words, because he was getting hospitality,
Right.
all right, and it would be he who would be raped.
Right.
Right,
Right, so he
So-
said, take my daughter,
so-
get her.
it's not my daughter, it's my concubine, it's the concubine. It's the concubine who's raped, not the.
No, but I thought he offered his daughter.
The old man
Yeah.
offered him his daughter, but what happens is that the Levite, and notice he's a Levite, right? Right. The Levite offers he stops the situation,
Yeah,
right? And not to endanger the host's daughter, I mean,
Is the concubine a slave?
Right. Here you find that concubine, also this is Tissot. You find the Levite finds his concubine on the doorstep,
that's true.
right?
That's true.
This is not the picture with her hands. You do see her hands, but I actually have a better picture, which is not, it's not in order here. Let me just jump down to show you a better picture. And then I'll come back to this one with the hands on the, oh, I don't have it here. Is this it? Yeah, this is, thus said Duray, all right? And here you can see the hands see her hands are out there on the,
Worst stuff.
and notice it says the corpse of the woman. It's not that clear. It's not that clear if she's alive or dead, by the way. The text really leaves it open. And Phyllis Fibble, and I followed Phyllis when I wrote, I in my wife reading book, I have the story of the concubine, and I actually allowed the possibility that she was alive. I have that as a possibility. So wait, we had this one, and now we have this one, and now we have this one, and now we have another picture, right? This is the Levite of Ephraim, again, and his dead wife. There's an assumption that she's dead, right? And this is presumably her body is out there, and he's looking at her body, right? And then you have another one with the Levite finding the concubine. This is a medieval manuscript.
My question before is, a concubine really a slave?
No, a concubine, I said earlier at the beginning, the concubine, including Hagar, who is also a concubine, has full rights as a wife, right? But she can be in addition to the wife. In other words, she could be like a saint, right? No, not so much as a mistress. Pelegish actually has a law. It's lawful. She's lawful. She has rights, right? She can't just be thrust out. All right. And basically, when Abraham thrusts out the concubine, he's doing something really unlawful, right? God says, listen to your wife. God tells him to do. And Ishmael has rights. He's the oldest son. And so basically what's going on there is, I don't want to go into that now, but okay. So here we have another picture, and now we're coming to this is an anonymous picture from 1494. It's a woodcut. Notice all of the pictures assume that she's dead, right? And what's really interesting is there's no respect for the dead here. Normally, we cover up a dead person, right? All of these pictures are not showing respect for the dead. I find that very interesting. Now, it's true, all of these are, they're not Jewish authors who are, they don't have to show respect for the dead because, they don't necessarily have the idea of covering up, but here, you don't see it. Okay, here's a horrible picture. This is the Levite getting ready to cut his wife into 12 pieces.
Let's hope she's dead.
She definitely looks like she's dead. No doubt about it. And here we have,
Oh, geez.
I said trigger warnings. We have the Levites dividing his concubine's body into 12 pieces. Now notice, we're horrified by this. I'm sorry, I said trigger warnings. we're horrified by this. The medieval people were not horrified by these stories. They had these appeared in manuscripts. Because they would be reading the Bible and they would have these pictures. We're horrified by them, and as we should be. But I think that also to a certain degree, the grotesque. I actually I'm thinking back to my college days. I'll move on to a better one, but they're not getting better. My college, my MA thesis was called "The Grotesque in English Literature," and I didn't look at pictures that much. I looked at literature, but you had grotesque was very much a part of medieval life in the Catholic world to show the difference between the good and the good and the bad, right?
Why are there two of her heads in there?
Yeah, why?
Because very often, no, because what happens in manuscripts, you have
Yeah,
you have the,
emotion.
right, and not only do they have head, they also have walking off with a body part, right?
Yeah.
You have the body
Yeah.
parts here, and there's the legs that are falling off, and then they're taking them off. Okay.
So I don't understand,
Yeah.
what is the extra head?
Yeah,
I mean, there's two different heads.
It's like going to happen.
It's going to happen. In other words, he's
In one photo, they have a few scenes.
right. We're going from
I
left to
see.
right. Okay, so
These pictures and all of this are strictly interpretations by different people.
by artists, of
on
course.
What the Bible says.
Oh, absolutely. By the way, pictures are midrash. It's a form of midrash, right? You've said that, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
it's a form of commentary.
Right. A commentary, yeah, sorry. I use the word midrash to mean commentary, so. Okay, so here we have, this is less threatening. Well, the other one was pretty bad. There you saw the entrails. Here, you
Yeah.
don't see the entrails, right?
This
But
is
you
much
do see the,
nicer.
what?
Much nicer.
Much nicer.
They're gonna take these parts of the bodies and take it around the country.
Now they're sending them to the.
Okay, let's count.
Each
1,
tribe.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and then 12.
12 tribes.
Yeah.
So everybody gets a piece of.
Okay, so now here, this, we're going to look at, this is a modern picture, right?
Anatomy.
And so let me just read the commentary here. The facts of this story are tragic enough. And then her story was adopted generations later by King David's scribes and turned into a metaphor for King Saul's alleged sins. And suddenly the Gibeonite rapists were Benjaminites. King Saul comes from the tribe of Benjamin. Okay? And so David comes from the tribe of Judah. So you have, the back and forth between them. And so some people say, all right, let me continue. Did the scribes add an extra atrocity for the Levi? They claimed that he chopped her body into 12 pieces and sent them out to the tribes. Clearly, he had so little respect for her body, living or lifeless. But this seems to be going too far and possibly was a literary invention of David's scribes. In other words, David's scribes who wants to make the tribe of Benjamin look awful, so that Saul, who comes from the tribe of Benjamin, also will look awful. Right? So it's quite possible that this story never happened, right? To make you all feel better. But it's still in the Bible, right? It's still in the Bible.
The question is which Bible?
Our Bible.
Our Bible?
Our Bible, the book of Judges, chapter 19.
Okay, it's our Bible.
Our Bible,
Parts of it.
okay? It's there. Not the pictures, but our Bible. Yes, absolutely. Right. So this artist here, Janet Schaffner, let me just introduce her to you before I go back to the other pictures. Right? When I Googled Judges 19, all right, or the concubine Gibeah, I came up with a lot of these interesting images. And Janet Schaffner, who died a couple of years ago, but she's a contemporary artist, you could Google her, was preoccupied with this topic. And she created several triptychs, or I think it's pronounced triptych. I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but I always mispronounce it. some of which feature body parts and wolves. Why wolves? Because the tribe of Benjamin is associated with wolves. In Hebrew, Binyamin Ze'ev, right? Ze'ev is a wolf, right? So the tribe, so she also has wolves in here. We'll look at that. We'll see that in a minute. She connects the tribe of Benjamin with the wolves and looks at Jacob's curse of him. At the end of the book of Genesis, um, Jacob blesses in quotation marks, because most of them are curses, blesses his sons. And one of them is about Benjamin, and he curses Benjamin, right? And except for this particular picture of that we have of Frida Kahlo, which is a self-portrait of herself as hunted deer, the pictures that we look at are from Schaffner's website. So let's start with just the Kahlo picture.
That's
right?
cool.
Right? This
There's
is
one
the
going
hunted
on the
deer.
market today for
right?
60 million.
60
Right?
million.
Just
50.
to show you, you know,
Bid.
okay, a similar type of thing. All right, so now let's go back to, so here we have the 12, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is Schaffner. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, so we have the 12. She's clearly following some of the medieval drawings. All right, here she has a horrible, this is not only, oh, I can't make it bigger. All right, maybe I should.
Huge.
Right?
It's huge.
It's huge up there. Okay, so you can see this is also like an orgy, right?
Is that supposed to be a cross at the bottom?
We're on the bottom.
No.
See it.
Oh, no.
I don't know where that red thing is from. I have no idea.
I think it's just on
It's an
the
arrow.
copy machine or something.
Maybe. But this might also lead into what happens in chapter 20 and 21. Because what happens is all the body parts are sent out. The tribes are outraged against Benjamin, the tribe of Benjamin, where it happened. And there's a huge civil war. The Benjaminites are very, very strong tribe, right? They're very, very strong. They are great fighters. And there's lots and lots of people who are killed on both sides. And very few people are left from the tribe of Benjamin. So few that it looks like they'll be decimated. So that's what happens in the next two chapters is they go and they marry. They basically take people from the two tribes that I mentioned earlier and they take them for wives, and that way you end up having the tribe of Benjamin that is not wiped out completely. Right? The people of Israel they're like horrified. What have we done? We've wiped out one of our brothers,
Yeah.
right? So and they said, well, we can't do that. So they find a way of getting
So
it to be done.
even though the tribal association goes through the man, right?
Yeah.
So they give it to the woman to keep
That's
it.
much later.
Oh,
The
no,
women-
but I'm saying if they're raping the women to continue the tribe of Benjamin, you're actually not, because the men are from a different tribe.
No, it's much later that you're Jewish because of women.
Right.
And so that when does that begin? Much later.
Yeah, that's like a different era.
It's probably in rabbinic times.
Yeah.
It's in rabbinic times, right? In other words, look, the reform who have what they call patrilineal descent. No, I'm just saying the reform who have
Different topic.
it's a different topic, but the reform base it on the Bible. I mean, that's their legitimate reason for having it. I know it's a sensitive topic. Okay, so here you could see very clearly the body parts. And I don't know why, but I don't have the one with the wolf in there. There's another one. I guess I took it off and I don't have the one with the wolf. If you want, I could look for it afterwards, but she does have it. So so this is, and one, I have two more okay, when we talk about body parts, I could never resist this. It's not funny, but in a book by Carol Adams, which is the sexual politics of meat, she makes an analogy in her book between women and hamburgers, right? women are to be objectified without agency. Think of, what's the name of that,
I've seen that in a butcher shop, actually.
okay,
Really?
Horrified.
You've seen this?
Screaming,
what, you've seen this?
absolutely.
Oh, no,
What channel is that?
It was in Newton, Massachusetts.
Oh, thank goodness.
oh my gosh,
I was screaming. I was literally screaming.
Oh
was
my
like,
gosh.
it's horrible.
really?
Yes, seriously.
Anyway,
My friend's pharmacy was right next door. By the time I got to the pharmacy,
too
it was
bad
out
you
of
did,
control.
you should have taken a picture of that, yeah.
Well,
If you ever go back and
that was a
still-
lot of years ago.
Well, if you ever go back and you see it, please send me a picture, my gosh, yeah.
I'm sure it's not there anymore.
I hope not. Anyway, so women are to be objectified, prepared, reshaped, acculturated, to be made consumable in a patriarchal world, okay? And so this is really horrible. Susan Neidich, who's another well-known Jewish Bible scholar, Tribble was not Jewish, writes that the dead woman's divided body is a radical symbolization of Israel's body politics, the divisions in Israel. It's paradoxical that his symbolic action asks that they act as members of one community to set wrong aright. The irony is that in order to act as united members, they must dismember the Pilegesh's body. The necessary cutting of a body in order to have a covenant and this is horrible, is reminiscence of the paradox of the expression lichrot brit, literally to cut a covenant. In other words, when you have the covenant, the brit, it's cutting, right? You're cutting, you cut, right? When you have a brit, right? Or in the case of circumcision, to actually cut off something, right? So in other words, the whole idea of cutting up a body and sending out the parts and having a covenant with the people to get together to do this, horrible thing that they are going to do, which will end up in civil war.
So
Okay.
cutting off the hair wasn't enough.
It wasn't just the head, it was the entire
The entire body was cut into 12 pieces.
12 pieces. Okay, so how are we doing with time? Okay, so what is the point of this narrative?
9 more minutes.
9 more minutes, but if you want to stop, this is commentary. If you want to stop and discuss it without the commentary, we can, but we don't, it's up to you.
A little bit over time.
All right, so the point is that these events are not unique in the Hebrew Bible. There are stories like there's the rape of Dinah, there's the rape of Tamar by her brother, her half brother. There's David's concubines, which if you have lots of concubines, all right. And of course the story in Sodom. So in other words, you do have the idea of, but in the story of Sodom, which we're going to be reading this week, God destroys the city, right? Here we have a civil war, all right. In Judges 19, the rape of the concubine is framed as a harm done to her husband, not to the woman, even as she ends up dead. The text is relatively uninterested in male responsibility. It's not specified in the original Hebrew version who pushes the concubine out of the house. Because I assume it's the husband, but it doesn't say that in the story. It says he pushes her out, right? Or whether she is even dead when her husband finds and members of it. The Greek translation, the Septuagint, as that she is already dead. In other words, for the Septuagint, it's a horrendous idea for them to conceive that she's not dead when he cuts her up. So they make it clear that she's already dead. The Hebrew is uncertain, all right? And there the focus is on the failure to show hospitality, okay? Rape and rape threats are used to establish dominance over and against male foreigners. And just, if we think about October 7th, where I'm sure you've seen many, many things, it's clear that rape was used as a weapon of war. right? So that, you know, that was made very, very clear.
Is this also in the Christian
Of
Bible?
course,
There's rape and all of them.
yeah, this is, I never use the word Old Testament. I never use the word Old Testament. The Christian Bible, the New Testament, includes what they call the Old Testament, what we call the Hebrew Bible or Tanakh. So of course it's there. Whether they read it or not is something else. Right? And how they use the story, again, is something else. I don't know how they use the story. The way this story is actually, so anyway, let me just continue. The gender violence in Judges does not end with the concubine's death. As part of the war, the other 11 tribes swear not to intermarry with the tribe of Benjamin. That's what happens. And after the war, Benjamin is threatened with extinction because they have no potential wives. In other words, you can't marry them because they're a sinning tribe. In response, the Israelite tribes come up with a solution. They kidnap 400 virgin women from Yavesh Gilad, an Israelite town that refused to participate in the war. And the Benjamites also kidnapped virgin women from a festival at Shiloh, an Israelite town north of Jerusalem. Both groups of kidnapped women are forced to marry male Benjaminites. One act of rape and murder has become many. Okay, so this is the end of the book of Judges. Could go back to the beginning. Achsa stands up for her rights. And this is what happens when things deteriorate and there's no law and order. Let me just see what else I have here. 1 second. Why is this not moving? Oh, where's my? Wait, why? Why won't it let me open this?
Well, what did you want?
I want to move down.
He's looking for a
It's not
person.
looking to, the cursor is not moving into, I want to get to 40.
You're on 40.
Okay, we don't need that. Okay, yes, this is actually important. So, in the Talmud, you have this story in where Rabbi Hista says a man should never terrorize his household. The concubine of Gibeah was terrorized by her husband, and she was the cause of many thousands being slaughtered in Israel. And Rabbi Judah, this is less important for us, said in the name of Rav, if a man terrorizes his household, he will eventually commit the 3 sins of unchastity. That's not so important. But the point is that the rabbis looked at this story as being really very, very problematic, and that a husband who finds fault with his wife, they see the Levite as finding fault with his wife, and that's why she ran away. Maybe he was an abusive husband, we don't know, but she ran away for legitimate reasons, right? And so, if I go up to the top, Rabbi Abiatar said that the Levite found a fly with her. In other words, something was wrong with her. Rabbi Yonatan said that he found a hair on her, all right? And Rabbi Abiatar soon afterwards and came across Elijah and talked to him. And anyway, the point is that the Levite who found something wrong with her and did not accuse her caused her to run away. All right. And where do they find the fly or the hair? In the food. All right. That's where they found it. So that's, and so the fly was not her fault. But some people say the hair maybe was. And by the way, very often when I don't know if you have to take out food occasionally, you can find some things in there. So, okay.
No. No.
Wait, okay, what's here? The point, okay, we don't have to talk about the point. Okay, and one last thing is also again Barbara Griffiths. So this is her description of we're 200 virgins short, right? So there's a yearly feast near Bethel, right? Hide in the vineyards and this is Judges 20:21, catch the daughters of Sheila. So you can see them dancing. Here are the Benjaminites on the left, right? Peering before they catch them. Now, what I must tell you, and we have time for 2 more minutes, there is a holiday in Israel, which is like your Valentine's Day, which is called Tu B'Av, the 15th of Av. And one of the things they celebrate is, without realizing it, is the marriage of the Benjaminites, the salvation of the tribe of Benjaminites by marrying the
Kidnap women.
the daughters of Shiloh. All right. What people don't realize is what are they celebrating? This is one of the things they're celebrating. Now, it's a very popular day to get married in Israel, just like I guess Valentine's Day is probably a popular day. And many people, if you want to get married on Tu B'Av, you have to book through in advance. And I had a friend, this was Charles' wife, Judith, who unfortunately died. At her son's wedding on Tu B'Av, I couldn't believe it. She actually told this story, and not this part of the story, not the pointing out that although this is the most desired day to get married, you should be reminded that the actual story on which it's based is not so desirable. And I will never forget that. I was present at the wedding, and I said, "Kol hakavod to her, your hats off for her being so honest at her." I don't think her son was very happy about it, but it was important for her to mention that. Yeah.
Bible
So-
stories for children.
Yeah, this is Barbara Griffiths. This is the right. Okay, I'm stopping the sharing. And if you have any comments or questions or reactions, I'm not running away.
Not very pleasant.
I don't try to be pleasant. That's what you have. That's what you have. My son.
No, we'll deal with it also. We have, we'll get to this story as well, we're not gonna always.
Still not.
The difficult stories.
Right, and you should. I think it's very important.
And it was a large poster, on the butcher shop is right, there's a lot of.